Well, welcome back, Devils fans. It is your host, Ace, here on Running with the Devils, where we are talking New Jersey Devils hockey all year long. Please hit the subscribe button, smash the like, share with a friend. Thank you very much. And just the other day, The Athletic put out an article ranking and talking about all the Devils prospects within the system, and they actually came in at number 8 league-wide for the pipeline rankings. And let's just get to the article here, and we'll kind of talk about it. New Jersey Devils ranked number 8 in NHL pipeline rankings for 2024. This is by Corey Pronman. The article starts off, to say that the New Jersey Devils have their defense of the future set up would be a mild understatement. No other organization can say they have the combined under-23 talent of Luke Hughes, Anton Silayev, and Seamus Casey coming up on their blue line. Their forward talent isn't anywhere close to that level, especially after Alexander Holtz didn't develop as planned and was traded. And a zinger right off the bat. Obviously, in that draft, when we took Holtz, we could have taken Askarov and been set potentially in goal for the next decade after Markstrom leaves. But, the ship sailed on that. We decided to go with Holtz. It didn't work out here, despite him showing signs of potential top 6 worthiness. We all know the seemingly long, tumultuous history between Lindy Ruff and Holtz, and it seemed like upper management as well. It just kind of seemed like an organization-wide thing that Alex Holtz was, in fact, kind of the whipping boy and wasn't living up to expectations. I was hoping for a big 24-25 season from Holtz. I thought he may have had kind of a improvement or taking the next step in his progression year, but they decided to pull the plug on that experiment, and he got dealt with Akira Schmid to the Vegas Golden Knights in the Paul Cotter trade. So, just another reminder early on in the article here that we whiffed pretty big on Holtz. And when you got first-round picks, especially ones in the top half of the first round, you really have to hit on those. Missing on a guy like Holtz, that's a pretty big miss. Obviously we're blessed with a cupboard of other great prospects in the system, but having a NHL impactful player with that pick would have been nice. But again, that's ancient history. And then before I get into the meat and potatoes of the article, I just want to give you the criteria up front. So, player eligibility. All skaters who are 22 years old or younger as of September 15th, 2024, regardless of how many NHL games they've played, are eligible. Player heights and weights are taken from the NHL. Tool grades. Tool grades are based on a scale with 6 separate levels with an eye toward how this attribute would grade in the NHL. Poor, below average, average, above average, high end, and elite. Average on this scale means the tool projects as NHL average, which is meant as a positive, not a criticism. Skating, puck skills, hockey sense, and compete for every projected NHL player are graded. Shot grades are only included if a shot is notably good or poor. Tier definitions. Tiers are meant to show roughly where in an average NHL lineup a player projects to slide in. So that's kind of the criteria of who was eligible to be included in this kind of prospect review. So there you have it. 22 years old or younger as of September 15th, 2024. And then we see here, it starts off, before we start getting into the nitty-gritty breakdowns, key additions, Anton Silayev, who we drafted with our number 10 overall pick. He somehow slid down that board to us. Mikhail Yegorov, goaltender we took in the second round with a pick we received from the Utah Hockey Club in the John Marino trade. And then key graduates, guys who are no longer eligible for this list, Jack Hughes, and then obviously Alexander Holtz. The 2023 ranking for the Devils prospects was 4. Obviously, Hughes was on that, so that's going to obviously, help it be towards the top of the list when Hughes is still counting under their criteria as a prospect, no longer eligible there. So 2023 ranking 4, and the 2024 NHL draft grade an A-, which, again, I don't know enough about some of the deeper round picks and things to, accurately weigh in on that there, but I do think Silayev was, from everything I was reading and looking at, pretty much a top 5 talent that slid down the board to us, and we were able to nab him at 10. So I'm happy we got him. A lot of you are going to be like, you didn't even want to draft with the pick. I didn't. And I'm not, giving revisionist history here. months ago, I said I would have preferred us to trade the pick for win now help, whether that was a top 6 winger or another piece that could have helped us push closer to a Stanley Cup this season and for the next maybe season or two beyond that. But I'm not heartbroken, and I said back then I wouldn't be heartbroken if we picked with it, but I really did prefer to trade for win now help. Didn't play out that way, and I think we got a steal of a player in Silayev with that 10th pick. So overall, I am very happy about it, and yeah, A- for the Devils here in the 2024 draft grade. And we start off player rankings. Here we go. Number 1, Luke Hughes, the defenseman born on September 9th, 2003, which means in about a week and a half, little Luke will be eligible to enter a bar or purchase liquor legally. Coming in at 6'2", 184 pounds, a left shot, drafted number 4th overall in 2021. For his tier, they have Bubble Elite NHL Player and NHL All-Star. Skating is ranked as high-end, puck skills above NHL average, hockey sense NHL average, compete NHL average, shot high-end. So you're talking about in 5 categories, you got a high-end in 2 of them, skating and shot, which I completely agree with. We've seen it, time and time again in spurts where Luke just picks up the puck and kind of knifes through everybody and goes end to end. There's a couple highlight plays from last year. I think one of them may have been late in the Columbus game, and then he had that Philly overtime goal. He had a couple of crazy highlight reel plays last year, but we've seen a lot of his elite skating on display, and that seems to be a common characteristic for all the Hughes boys. They're all ridiculously good skaters, and he also got high end for his shot. Again, I agree with that. When Luke could get one off, he has a nice shot. Puck skills above NHL average. I could see that. And then hockey sense and compete, NHL average. I can't argue with this here. Pretty glowing remarks across the board for Luke Hughes as the number 1 player in the rankings. And I do think Luke is going to be a very, very, very good defenseman in 2 or 3 years. I think this season we'll see him take the next step forward with 1 season under his belt. Hopefully he cuts down on some of those kind of rookie mistakes we've seen, especially in our own end. Cuts down on those, kind of, plays a little bit more reserved in our own end. Don't take chances. Just be a little more responsible and just tighten that up. I think once he does that, and having a veteran D partner will definitely go a long way in helping him do all these things. I think, in a few years he's going to be really good. He's turning 21 next week, guys. I mean, even 3 years from now, he'll be 24. I mean, wow. Wow, what is he going to be at 24? And then even beyond, 25, 26, 27, what is he going to be? The sky's the limit. The pedigree is there. We've seen what his brothers are doing. And I think Luke is going to be a really good one for us. We move on to the analysis. Hughes was one of the top rookies in the NHL and a big part of New Jersey's offense this season. He's a dynamic skater with freakish edge work and explosiveness for a defender his size. He combines his excellent skating with a high skill level and strong offensive creativity, making him a constant offensive threat. Hughes' defensive play will never be his calling card. With his length and feet, he should make enough stops that you can live with the hiccups and over-aggressive play, given he will generate so much offense. He has the looks of a long-time NHL star defenseman a team can build around. And I agree with the analysis. He's never going to be that shut-down, world-beater defensive defenseman, but his defensive play gets elevated, and I believe it can, and it will. That combined with what he can do offensively makes him overall a very good NHL defenseman. No arguments from me here. We go to number 2 on the list, Anton Silayev, born on April 11th, 2006. The 6'7", 211-pound defenseman, also a left-handed shot. Drafted number 10 overall in the 2024 draft a few months back. The tier they have him listed as NHL All-Star. Skating, NHL average. Puck skills, NHL average. Hockey sense, above NHL average. Compete, high end. And wow. I mean, this kid is only 18 years old, 6'7", 211 pounds. He might grow another inch or 2. Who knows? I mean, maybe even more than that. This kid can end up being the 6'9", 240. Who knows? Hopefully he gets bigger. And what a great piece to have in the pipeline. what a great piece to have in the pipeline. I was able to see a little bit of him in development camp in July at the Rock. I'll put a link in the description. Check it out. I have a couple of videos of just Silayev, and I think I have one just kind of like a overall mix of videos from the development camp. But he looks huge in person. He looked pretty good in the small stints that I was able to see him and record him in during that. But check out that video if you haven't seen it, link in description. And I like to see guys with above NHL average hockey sense, because that's something that, while I do think people could kind of develop in that realm and get smarter and, a little more keen to the game as time goes on, for someone to have that at such a young age and already to be calling it above NHL average, I mean, that's great to see. Hockey sense is one of those things, again, it's not the easiest thing to work on and get better at. I've seen guys that have done it, but when you have it already in you at such a young age, it's a great thing to see on his little report card here. And compete. Compete is one of the most underrated, I think. It's not a true metric, right? It's more of a characteristic or, kind of a personal element. But high-end compete, love to see it. A lot of times last year, I thought on some nights there was a lot of guys that weren't giving that high-end compete or anything even close to it. And, body language is a lot. And there's a lot of games we watched last year. We all saw them that you're just like, well, what kind of effort was that tonight? They have him listed as a high-end compete, and hopefully Silayev, whenever he gets here, whether it's 2 years, 3 years, whatever it is, hopefully he brings that in, steps into the defense, and is a monster, because he's really looking like he could be a special player for sure. Analysis. Silayev took a regular shift with power play time on a KHL team this season as a 17-year-old and stood out for Torpedo in the KHL playoffs. When he went down to their junior team for their playoffs, he wasn't as good as expected, although he was strong enough to end his year captaining Russia's U20 team. He is a unique type of prospect who is easy to dream on. He can play all situations and play on his off wing. Silayev is a 6'7" defenseman who skates very well for his size. He has excellent footwork and a smooth stride with strong four-way mobility. He closes gaps quickly on his check, plays a very physical brand of hockey, and thus projects to be a premier shutdown type of defenseman in the NHL. Give me premier shutdown defenseman all day. He can skate pucks out of his zone well, makes a good first pass, and shows strong hockey sense at the offensive blue line. Silayev has strong puck skills and can beat pro defensemen one-on-one often enough. His offensive play won't blow you away, but it's good enough to move pucks in the NHL and get points. He can be solid offensively to go with his elite defensive play and could be a potential number one defenseman one day. Again, all stuff you love to see, shutdown defensemen. I do think at the moment the New Jersey Devils on our current roster, as well as some of our other prospects, are more of those offensive defensemen. And I do like to see a true defensive defenseman once in a while. And this kid is going to be it. He's not going to be, flying around, going pinching super deep into the offensive zone, trying to put up points. He is there to keep chances down, keep the puck out of our own end. And a shutdown defenseman, I think, is just what the doctor ordered for the future. And Silayev could possibly be that guy for us, and I'm hoping he will be. It seems like he will. And the countdown is on till the Silayev era is underway in New Jersey. Number 3 on the list, Shimo Nemec, our man Nemo. 20 years of age, born February 15th, 24, 6'1", 190 pounds, shoots right. Drafted number 2 overall in 2022. Tier, bubble top and middle of the lineup player. Skating, NHL average. Puck skills, NHL average. Hockey sense, high end. Compete, above NHL average. And again, we have a lot of high-flying skaters and flashiness on the blue line. Again, I love to see a high-end grade in the hockey sense and an above NHL average compete. I do think Nemec is going to be a very steady, very good defenseman for us in the not-too-distant future. Just like Luke, I think with now, last season under his belt, I do think he will take the next step in his progression this season, cut down on some of the mistakes we saw from him, and again, being insulated with maybe a more veteran partner long-term will do him wonders as well. And with Pesce and Dillon in the lineup now, we do have some options. We definitely have some options with our pairings, and it'll be interesting to see how that all shakes out in camp and through the preseason. But Shimo Nemec, the sky's the limit for him as well. I have high hopes for him, and I think we're going to see him take the next step for the Devils next year. Analysis on Shimo Nemec. Nemec had a great second season in North America, becoming a regular part of New Jersey's lineup and looking good in the NHL as a teenager. His skill and hockey sense stood out consistently at the NHL level. Nemec is a super smart puck mover with the skill and confidence to make difficult plays. He's a strong enough skater to create on the move. His pure athleticism doesn't jump off the page, but it's good enough, given his elite brain, to be a big minutes defenseman. He can make stops because of how smart he is and has a solid compete level. I don't know if Nemec is ever going to put up star-level numbers, especially if Hughes is a long-term PP1 man, but he can be a great two-way defenseman for a while. Again, glowing remarks. Love to see it. The only thing that kind of scares me there is when they're talking about Luke Hughes as the PP1 man. I will say I firmly hope that, at the start of the season, we do see Dougie Hamilton back on power play 1. I'm a big believer in Dougie, especially on the power play. I think I would love to see Luke, on power play 2 at the point there. But power play 1, I think, has to be Dougie Hamilton. And if he struggles, then you go back to Luke. But if it's up to me, Dougie's definitely taken the point on the first power play unit at the start of the season for sure. It's kind of his job to lose, in my opinion. But that's another thing to keep an eye on to see how it shakes out. Nemec actually got hurt today playing in a game for Slovakia in the Olympic qualifying tournament. There's going to be another video coming up where I'm going to cover a bunch of stuff. But if you haven't seen it, there's kind of a collision. He goes flying into the boards and looked like it was a shoulder or something. Instead, it was an upper body injury. He eventually, was wincing in pain and walked off down the tunnel. And I believe that the report was there's nothing broken or dislocated and that he's going to be evaluated tomorrow. And then apparently it'll be up to the New Jersey Devils to give him permission to play on Sunday or not. So that'll be another interesting thing to see. What is the real scope and severity of the Nemec injury that he suffered today in a Olympic qualifying game for Slovakia? And we'll find out more about that tomorrow. And I will say, for a lot of people, I was just reading some things earlier today online in regards to Nemec getting hurt. And people were like, oh, this is why guys shouldn't play in these tournaments, or they should only be playing for their pro team. I understand why some people feel that way, but I do think it is very short-sighted. I do think the international competitions like the World Cup, but more specifically the Olympics being the big one, that these guys really care about that a lot. And I think it is super greedy in an act of almost self-preservation, right? Like, I don't want him to get hurt playing for that team because he's my property. I just think it's, it just doesn't feel right. I think these guys should be given the opportunity to play for their country, represent their country on the biggest stage, which is the Olympics. Finally, we're going back to the Olympics in 2026. And I just think there needs to be some sort of, I don't know what the, how you figured out or how you solve it so everybody's happy, but maybe, the player or the country that has to pay for some separate insurance in case something happens. I mean, obviously, if you have a star player and he goes down in one of these international tournaments, not having them on your roster is going to be a nightmare regardless. But maybe in terms of the money, I don't know how the contracts work and all that, but maybe they could figure out something with insurance where the onus is either on the player individually or on their team that they're representing at the Olympics to kind of pay that. I don't know. It's kind of messy. I see both sides of it, but overall, I think the guys have to be able to play in these international games and represent their country. I just don't see how you can take that away from them. I think it's super cheesy, and I hope that there's not really a push to fight that because I know the players have fought for so long to be able to get back to the Olympics. Number 4 on the list, Dawson Mercer, the center, born October 27th, 2001, 6 feet, 180 pounds, shoots right, drafted 18th overall in the 2020 draft tier. Bubble top and middle of the lineup player. Skating, NHL average. Puck skills, above NHL average. Hockey sense, NHL average. And now, speaking of Dawson Mercer, Dawson Mercer is not signed, folks. For those of you at home paying attention, Dawson Mercer is still without a contract. This is lingering on now. We're in the last day of August, not even late August, it's the last day of August. And I don't know what's going on. I'll probably make a whole separate video on this in the coming days or whatever, but he's not under contract right now, and it's almost time for me to get nervous. But anyway, he's still, because of his age, counted in the prospects for this article. And bubble top and middle of the lineup player, I kind of agree. I think he's a middle six guy. And this is going to be, assuming he comes to camp and plays the Devils and he has his contract and all that stuff figured out, I do think he will be given a chance to play on the second line, and it'll be up to him to stay there. I think we have our top four is just completely amazing, and then I think most people have Mercer kind of penciled in as the number 5, and then with tons of possibilities for the sixth and final guy in the top 6, but I think Mercer will be there assuming he's on the roster for this season. And I think this is going to be a big year for him to kind of prove, coming off the somewhat of a slump season he had last year, that he is the guy that the organization was hoping he would be and that all the fans think he's going to be. I think he is a legitimate top 6 forward, and I hope he takes that next step this year as well. I think he's going to be given the opportunity. He's going to have some better line mates, and we'll see what happens with Dawson Mercer. But a very interesting case with his contract, and hopefully it gets ironed out soon. Mercer's production took a step back this season, but his projection remains promising. There's a reason he still played a ton of minutes for New Jersey. He's a versatile player who can play center or wing and on both special teams. Mercer isn't the flashiest player in terms of speed or skill, but he has enough talent to go with his excellent work ethic to make a difference. He wins a lot of battles and creates a lot of offense at the net front. He looks like a legit top-line winger or a number 2 center on a top team. And again, I agree wholeheartedly there. He was drafted as a center. He's been primarily a winger on the New Jersey Devils for his career. He is versatile in that he can play special teams. I do feel like he's like an Energizer Bunny type of player. A lot of energy, a lot of tempo, and I just like his overall demeanor. I think he's a guy that gets fired up, and I think we need that on our team. I think he's one of the more fiery guys. A couple years ago, he had that crazy point streak, which was fun to watch. That all go down. I forget how many games it ended at. Maybe like 12 or 13, maybe. But he had that crazy streak, and I've been rooting for him for a while. I like the kid. Hopefully this all gets figured out. And at the end here, they said something interesting, that he looks like a legit top-line winger or a number 2 center on a top team. And I started to think about this. I was talking to my good friend Steve the Maniac. Some of you remember Steve the Maniac. I was talking to him a couple nights ago, and we were talking about the whole contract thing with Mercer and how it's all going to play out. And the reality is, because we have Jack Hughes and Nico Hischier as our top 2 centers, even if Mercer wanted to play center, at best case, he's now a third-line center. And so I wonder, if him and his agent, if they're, kind of thinking that Mercer is better off on another team because he could be maybe a second-line center on another team, but which he would never be able to be on the Devils anytime soon. And generally, centers get paid more than wingers. And so, I don't know, maybe they're, in their little conference powwow, Mercer and his agent and whoever else is involved on his team, that they're like, you know what? While New Jersey's future is bright and everything else, the reality is if you do want to play center and get that max money, you're not going to get it here because we have 2 great centers in Nico Hischier and Jack Hughes. And so I wonder if that's a little part of it. I don't know. Maybe I'm just, crazy here and just kind of conjuring things up out of thin air. But it is something to think about, that if he believes he's a legitimate NHL center and would like to play center, I would think on a lot of teams he would be a second-line center. And that's going to be more money for him than being a winger. And that's just the economics of hockey. So I'll be curious to see how this all plays out. Again, who knows if it's a bridge deal they're talking or long-term. I'm going to make another separate video because I could talk about this for a while. There's a whole bunch of different things I was looking at involving Mercer. We go to number 5 on the list, Lenni Hameenaho, the right winger, born November 7th, 2004, 6 feet tall, 173 pounds, shoots right, drafted number 58 in 2023, tier, projected to play NHL games. Skating is ranked as NHL average, puck skills NHL average, hockey sense NHL average, compete above NHL average, shot above NHL average. And I actually saw Hameenaho at the 2023 development camp. I'm sure he was there this past year too, but the way they had it set up was kind of crazy and hard for me to really hone in on any specific guy. But I did get a very good look at him at development camp 2 years ago in 2023, and I thought he was one of the guys that stood out to me, while watching the scrimmages and things. A lot of people are high on him. A lot of people think he's nearly NHL ready or will be soon. They have him listed as NHL average in everything through the first 3 categories except compete. Again, love the high-level compete guys. They have him as above NHL average in that department and shot above NHL average. So maybe he'll be in the mix in the next couple of years as well. Definitely a name to watch for sure. And the analysis. Hameenaho had a great season versus men in Finland. He scored 31 points in 46 Liga games. He's a well-rounded winger whose game translates up levels. He's a good skater and puck handler who can create chances for himself and others with pace. Hameenaho can create off the perimeter and at the net. He's not overly physical, but he works hard and wins battles. He can be a bottom 6 wing in the NHL. You need depth guys and bottom 6 guys to win in this league. And you see it with Florida, and you see it with the teams that go far. Deep teams with quality bottom 6 guys find ways to win. Whether it's grinding out ugly wins or just kind of beating on the other team on some nights. You need depth guys, and hopefully we see him in the next couple of years. Number 6 on the list, Mikhail Yegorov, a goaltender born March 7th, 2006, 6'5", 188 pounds, catches left, drafted number 49 in 2024. Tier projected to play NHL games, skating NHL average, hockey sense below NHL average. And again, another very young kid, only 18 years old. We drafted him in the second round this year with the pick we got from the Utah Hockey Club in that Marino trade. And I like big goalies. I do. I don't need them to be big, but whenever they come big, I like it. 6'5", 188 pounds. He'll obviously get a little bit bigger, I'm sure, at least weight-wise, as he, grows into his man body. But a lot of people are high on this kid. I've been reading a lot about him. A lot of people think he could be one of the next really good ones. It is a bit concerning that they say his hockey sense is below NHL average. And I've seen that sentiment kind of echoed in other places. But again, only 18 years old, has plenty of time to develop. And I think he will be one of the guys pushing for a roster spot on the New Jersey Devils in the next few seasons. Markstrom is here for 2 years for sure. Jake Allen only has 1 year on his deal. And so that leaves the 25-26 season. It seems that's set up for Dawes to be the backup that year. It does seem like it'll be Markstrom and Dawes. And then, again, who knows if Markstrom signs for any season or 2 beyond his current contract. I could see it happening if he plays well. But either way, in the crop of goalies waiting in the wings in the system, Yegorov is in the mix with Dawes and Poulter and Brennan and Malik and the other guy we drafted. So we'll see. We will see what the future holds for this kid. I'm sure it'll be a few years at least before we see him. And he's going to be one of the guys fighting for a spot on the New Jersey Devils. Analysis. Yegorov came over from the CSKA program to the USHL this season. He emerged as Omaha's full-time goalie, although his performance was inconsistent. Yegorov has clear pro potential. He's nearly 6'5" and moves quite well in the net. I wouldn't call his side-to-side movements explosive, but he can make tough saves and is nimble for a guy his size. On his best nights, where he's squaring up pucks, and given the type of stops he can make, he looks like a clear NHL goalie. Too often that doesn't happen, though. Yegorov can struggle with his reads and decisions, challenging at the wrong time or struggling to pick up where the puck is going. He projects as a backup goalie in the NHL, but has a chance to become a starter if he really hits. And listen, being a quality backup is not a bad thing either. Obviously, for all the goalies we have, I'm hoping they could all become starters, and we have this glut of NHL starting goalies to piece out to get other pieces to help the team. It would be great if we had all these goalies that were NHL capable in a few years as starters, but you need backups too. A solid backup, especially now with the way the league is going. I'm not a fan of it, and a lot of you that have been watching me for a while know this. This tandem or near tandem situation I am not a fan of. I, would prefer to have a stud, a true stallion workhorse as your starter that could play 55 to 60 games. And a lot of people think that's crazy. I personally do not. and neither does the great Martin Brodeur. He thinks these guys are a little babied as well. But anyway, Yegorov, what does the future hold for him? We will find out. The goaltending situation in the post-Markstrom era is very unclear at the moment, but there's a ton of guys in the system that'll be duking it out to see who's going to make the big club. Number 7 on the list, Seamus Casey, a defenseman born January 8th, 2004, 5'9", 162 pounds, shoots right, drafted number 46 in 2022. Tier, projected to play NHL games, skating above NHL average, puck skills NHL average, hockey sense above NHL average, compete NHL average, and shot above NHL average. So you got 3 above NHL averages there in skating, hockey sense, and shot. Sign me up. I was able to see Seamus Casey up close at both the development camp in 2024, which was in July a couple months ago, as well as in 2023. I actually did a couple different videos on him exclusively for the 2023 development camp. So if you haven't seen those videos, check that out. I'll put those links in the description as well. But Seamus Casey, another guy, Luke's teammate at Michigan, they're both Wolverines. I think this kid is going to be a very good NHL defenseman as well. Being that he's so young, I don't want to see him on the Devils this year. A lot of people were like, oh, I hope we see Seamus Casey. I don't. I personally don't hope we see him this year, because that would mean that someone got injured or multiple guys got injured, because in my opinion, I've talked about this before as well, is that when you have a ton of young kids on defense, shit's going to happen. Things are going to happen, and there's going to be really ugly breakdowns and things that happen, and it could happen often. I mean, we saw it last year with Luke and Nemec playing such big minutes on some nights. We got exposed a lot. They got exposed a lot. The defense was kind of porous, and it's all part of the growing pains and all part of, on-the-job training for these kids, especially defensemen. And I think interjecting another young, inexperienced kid on the blue line would be a total nightmare. And so I do think we are pretty well insulated from having to throw Casey into the NHL fire. Hopefully he plays in Utica, has a killer year, and the Devils reassess after next season. But we do have some veteran defensemen on the depth chart in Kovacevic, and then we also have Hataka. So, barring a ton of injuries, I personally do not think we will see Seamus Casey in the league this year. And if we do, it would be out of extreme dire circumstances. That's just my opinion on it, but hopefully he has a killer year in Utica. Analysis. Casey was one of the top defensemen in the Big Ten this season and an important part of USA's U20 team that won gold. He's a dynamic offensive player due to how good a skater he is and his creative offensive mind. He makes a lot of highly skilled dekes and passes at an NHL pace. He is very elusive and can walk the blue line like a pro. Casey has NHL power play tools, but the debate will be on his defense. He is a small defenseman who isn't overly physical, and he will need to win over a coach to trust him at even strength. And yeah, I hate to knock guys for size. Brian Giunta is one of my favorite Devils of all time, and he was a small guy. But, we have some smaller guys in the lineup now. We have a lot of younger guys, and again, I just think throwing small, inexperienced kids in the NHL, not a great idea. And hopefully he gets a little bit bigger, bulks up a little bit, and we see him in a year or two, depending on how everything goes for him in Utica. I've also talked about how I thought he was going to be one of our most valuable trade pieces to another team, whether it was potentially get Askarov or some of the other names that were being thrown around over the last 5 or 6 months. I thought we might see Casey get dealt, because I do feel he is super valuable and he just doesn't fit the team kind of in the short term. But things could change with trades of other guys, so you never know. It's great to have good prospects in the system, and Casey's another one of them. That wraps up the top 7 prospects, and then they go to the last portion of this. Has a chance to play. Chase Stillman is a forward who plays hard, skates well enough, and has some skill, but the natural offense in his game has been a question for years, even after being drafted in the first round in 2021. Mikhail Diot is an intriguing free agent signing. He's a big mobile defenseman whose first pass may be good enough to allow him to play real minutes as a pro. Some scouts really like Artem Barabosha because he's a big defenseman who can skate and hits hard. I like good skating and I like hard hitting. I don't see much puck play in his game, though. Daniil Karpovich is also a defenseman with a highly intriguing toolkit. He can skate and could have first pass offense as a pro. And I've been rooting for Chase Stillman for a while. I saw some clips and things of him in juniors. He's another feisty guy, brings the energy, doesn't back down. There's actually, I'll see if I can find it, and I'll put the video in the description. There's going to be a lot of links to other things in this description, but there was I think it was 2 years ago, there was a sequence where I think it was in a playoff game in the OHL. He absolutely levels a guy with a body check, like just absolutely blows this guy up and crushes him. The guy's laid out on the ice, and then one of the guy's teammates comes over and tries to fight Stillman, and Stillman just beats his ass, just hits him with a bunch of bombs. Nice overhand rights, boom, and busts the guy up in the fight, and then they like skip a couple seconds forward in the clip, and you see both the guy that he checked and the guy that he fought both walking down the tunnel. And he knocked out 2 guys on one sequence. It was beautiful to see. I went crazy the first time I saw it. And Stillman, yeah, is another one of those guys that, are we going to ever see him on the big club? I don't know. I'd imagine he would be at training camp. Or at least I hope he's going to be at the big boy training camp. But Stillman's another guy I'm rooting for. We'll see. We just have a lot of bottom 6 guys, I feel like, right now. And a lot of potential bottom 6 guys. And so I do think the bottom 6 is super crowded. And I think it's going to be hard for a guy like Stillman to crack it anytime soon. I really do. We just have tons of guys. If you just look at paper and you just start looking at all the guys we have, it's a lot. It's a real lot. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see another trade or something at some point in the season. It just seems like we just have a lot of guys and not enough roster spots. So I'm curious to see how that goes. And then they list. I'm not gonna read this whole list. I'll just leave it up there on the screen for a little bit. But this is the list of like the rest of the prospects they believe have a chance to play in the league. So I'll leave that up there for a little bit. You guys can check that out. Let me know in the comments what you guys thought about the rankings. Let me know if you think that the order of the prospects made sense to you. If you thought they were either too generous or too harsh in some of the subgrading. Overall, I thought it was pretty good and pretty spot on. If I'm being fair, I thought it was a well done piece. I was excited to see this, and this was a couple days ago, so I've been meaning to talk about it. But anything else, Devils hockey, throw it out there in the comments. We are almost in September, which means we are in the month of preseason games. Let the countdown begin. I am super jacked. I am a summer kid. I love the summer. But I also love my New Jersey Devils hockey. And while the end of the summer is always bittersweet for me, it means that we're just right around the corner from puck drop. And we are slowly marching our way there, kids. We are slowly marching our way towards puck drop. Anything Devils hockey, throw it out there in the comments. Thank you for watching. I love you all. Like, comment, subscribe, and all that jazz. Until next time, friends, let's go Devils.